Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all doing really well. In this video, I want to talk about mistakes. Specifically, mistakes that I've made, that I've tried to learn from, that hopefully you guys can learn from as well. And, rather than make this a video along the lines of 3 easy things to do that you need to do in order to be a successful musician or guitar player, I figured I'd just kind of lay out 3 things that I didn't really get at the time that were mistakes, that I realized were mistakes, and that I've done my best to work on professionally, artistically, and just generally as a person. I think a lot of the time when you are listening to people talk about why they were successful, whatever their metric of success is, that it's very easy for them to misattribute cause and effect in that case. So let's talk about mistakes instead. And the first mistake that I think I was very guilty of when I started playing guitar, that I'm still probably guilty of, is misattributing information and knowledge. In a way, the syndrome we call gear acquisition syndrome is very much a symptom of this kind of deeper mistake that you can make, where you mistake raw information for practical knowledge. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I was really, really fortunate that my dad plays guitar. And I really, really wanted a Boss distortion pedal because I had read on the internet and in guitar magazines that some of my favorite players used the Boss DS1. Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, to name 2. Both guys I really wanted to emulate artistically. I guess their careers were very, very enviable as well. Like, here are 2 of the biggest names in the guitar playing business, and they just play instrumental guitar music, and they're amazing. And hey, I noticed they both talked about using a Boss distortion pedal. If I have that, I can be like them. And I always remember my dad saying to me, you don't want a distortion pedal. I'm going to get you an EQ pedal. I'm going to get you an EQ pedal to use with your amp. Then you can learn about how to EQ a guitar sound, how you can use it in different places in your rig. It's really flexible. You can use it a bunch of different ways. It's EQ. What you want is EQ. And I remember thinking at the time, man, you don't know anything. I read several interviews where people were talking about how good the Boss DS1 is. I want that thing. And subsequently, my dad, being the awesome dude that he is, he got me an EQ pedal. And I remember thinking, well, this sucks. And then he showed me a few ways you could dial this in. Like, he actually had practical knowledge that I was ignoring because I had read a piece of information somewhere elsewhere and just taken it as gospel. I still have that EQ pedal, and I'm so glad that I got it and that I learnt how to use it, even after initially writing off the idea for longer than I like to admit. Another example would be, for example, modes and music theory. When I was younger, I absolutely devoured everything that I could about modes and music theory. Again, thinking that that raw information would make me a better musician and a better player. Now, when I started playing music with people, like actual human beings in the room, and we were talking about things, I found out that a lot of them didn't speak that same language of modes and scales and intervals and all these kind of things, and that all that information I had circulating around in my brain didn't really count for squat because, for example, I was always rushing when I was playing. A really simple, fundamental, issue of time and rhythm. I didn't understand what an anticipation was, talking to a drummer and being like, him saying, oh yeah, that hit for that chord? Make sure you anticipate it. I didn't know what was going on because I had just collated all this guitar-related information, and I was severely lacking in practical music knowledge. And that's something now that, as a guitar teacher as well, I really try to impart onto my students. Like, there's so much information out there. You're probably watching this video and going, oh, there's just a bunch of information as well. What's the point, Leon? What are you talking about? And to take that information, actually turn it into hardened musical knowledge, means you have to play. I wasn't spending enough time actually sitting down and playing, whether it was having a piece of gear and learning how to dial it in, whether it was taking a mode or a scale and rather than just play it on the guitar, writing a piece of music with it and trying to think about how I could use that mode or scale or musical concept and actually integrate it into a piece of music, or how could I use these things and implement them practically to make me a better team player as part of a band. And that kind of segues into my next mistake that I made, especially when I started writing and recording original music in a band. And that was being too precious with musical ideas. Now, a lot of the time, if you do get the opportunity to record your own music, you may have had 5, 10, 15 years of playing the instrument and coming up with little tunes and little riffs. And it's a really natural thing. It's kind of human nature to want to take those ideas and get them out as quickly as possible. So, for example, I'll use another example for me. When we started recording what became our very first EP with Ragdoll, I had a bunch of song ideas that were very 80s metal inspired. Like, they just sounded like Judas Priest songs. And I had written a few little vocal melodies and I had some ideas, and they were all like, you know, singing in the highest possible register for a male. Like, we're talking Rob Halford on 11 all the time. And then going to the rehearsal room, rehearsing these, trying to record them, and working with singers who would go, oh, you know, that's not a bad idea, but it just doesn't sit in my range. And can I try something? And then me really pushing back hard with that and being like, I wrote the song. This is my idea. I've had this idea in my head for 10 years. We're going to record it exactly like that. Essentially just being too precious, treating that musical idea as though it was some core part of my identity. When at the end of the day, it was just a musical idea. It's, you know, it doesn't, somebody liking that idea and wanting to use it and not liking it doesn't reflect on me as a person. It's just a musical idea. And when I kind of got over that and I was like, hey, you know what? Rather than spend months developing one musical idea and treating it like a baby that, you know, the world is out to get, maybe I could just come up with an idea. I could record a really quick demo of it, and then I could move on. I could try and record another musical idea. And then I've got 2 musical ideas. If I kind of demo those up, I could have 3 musical ideas. I could keep doing that. And that habit, you know, that kind of like being way too precious and then getting over it and then trying to develop a better habit in its place of just, when I have an idea, I try to record it as quickly as possible, whether it's on my computer or whether it's on my little voice recorder. And I catalog all these ideas. I normally just keep them in an iTunes playlist. And then that way, for example, we've been recording a bunch of new Ragdoll music. I have an iTunes playlist of like 60 or 70 ideas in various stages of completion where I can just send them to the other guys in the band and say, hey, which ideas do you like? And normally, we all kind of like slightly different things, but there's quite a bit of overlap in there. And we focus on those ideas that we all like, rather than individuals going, you know what, this is my song. If this song isn't done the way I like it, I'm out. It's about collaboration. It's about compromise. It's about creating a space for everybody to express themselves rather than being super precious about musical ideas. So those 2 points, like I said, they kind of, that second thing about being precious about ideas probably comes down to experience. The first point, information versus knowledge, is definitely about experience. I mean, the only way to learn from any of this stuff is to actually do it. So in the doing, try to apply these ideas and, you know, try to be attentive to, I guess, when you are being too precious or when you're just regurgitating information that you heard on the internet. And hopefully you'll have way more fun when you're playing as well, which is kind of the ultimate goal for all of this. And that's really easy to forget about. Tying into that idea of fun, the last mistake that I think I made early on was not maximizing my time, especially traveling and especially touring. And this is very contingent on having these opportunities, obviously. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I wanted to talk about things that I did wrong in the hope that, you know, if you do end up in a similar situation, or if you do find yourself in similar situations from time to time, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. So the first time Ragdoll went and played overseas, we got booked to play a big festival in the United States. Granted, we were playing a side stage. Granted, we were playing at like the middle of the day, but we were able to take that opportunity that we otherwise just would not get living where we live. And after that, that really massive peak of, you know, achieving this goal that we'd all had since we were basically teenagers, you know, going overseas, playing a festival, playing in another country, especially the US. We had like 5, 6, 7 days off between that and the next show that we had. And, you know, rather than taking the opportunity to maybe travel around and see a bunch of new places, or to try and, you know, get on the phone and ring around and try to book some more gigs while we were there. We just kind of sat around at a friend's place in our jocks, not doing much, complaining, getting, kind of annoyed with one another because of that. That was a big mistake. There was so much stuff we could have done in that week. And that's something we learnt from pretty quickly, because that can be pretty unpleasant, especially, if you're staying up really late. I personally don't drink, but it's really easy when you're playing in a band to just, be given a whole bunch of drugs and alcohol and to just go nuts with it all and, wake up at 5 the next day and stumble out of bed and sit around until the gig. Try to get out and do something every day that is not related to, doing music or doing the gig. Like, even if it's just to go for a walk. And that is good on so many levels, because new experiences are great. That's part of the fun of traveling, but it's also good for your kind of health and well-being. And I find that now when I'm on tour, I really make a point of every single day just trying to do something that I wouldn't get the opportunity to do at home, rather than, like I said, sit around in my jocks and complain. It's like, you know what? There's a coffee store down the road. I've got half an hour. I'm going to walk down there. I'm going to get a coffee. I'm just going to talk to the person making me the coffee and, see what other things there are around, and generally try to just be kind of curious and, open to new experiences. And on subsequent tours since then, when we've been out there, we've been, really proactive in trying to do that and trying to maximize the time, try to, see cool stuff. If we've got a gap in our schedule, I'll get on the phone and ring around and see if we're traveling through somewhere, if we can be added to a bill or something like that. And there's just so many things like that, which you kind of learn the hard way. And especially if you're an independent band like we are, because the next year we went to the States, 2013, we had a bunch of shows booked. We were meant to be really busy, and they all got canceled in the middle of the tour. And I remembered from that previous tour that sitting around doing nothing was not a very fun experience, or an experience that I wanted to recreate. So I rang every single person in my phone, every American number that I had, and I said, hey, can you help? Do you know somewhere where we can play? And it turned out to be one of the best tours we ever did. We managed to fill up, I think it was like a block of 5 or 6 weeks. So it was pretty terrifying. We had such a great time, such a great tour. But if we didn't have that experience of just kind of sitting around doing nothing, there's no way we would have taken that initiative. So that's an experience that I definitely learnt from, and I would definitely, out of anything, I recommend, if you guys do have that experience, that, maximize your time. And this is just my perspective on all of this as well. These are only 3 points. I feel like I'm constantly making mistakes and constantly learning from them. I guess that's just kind of the nature of the beast, whether it's playing music or it's being a person in general. So I would love to hear from you guys, if you're willing to share what you think the mistakes you made were when you started off playing guitar, playing music, touring, whatever experiences that you have had, the mistakes that you've made and what you've learned from them, because I think we can all learn from them. And if you're willing to share those, please put them in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and I really hope it was worthwhile. I will see you next time. Stay excellent.